Wild boys and girls, mummies and daddies, grandparents, all you folks.
Ships at
It's-
sea?
yep.
Forget them.
It's that magic hour again when the Bill Crane Report is on the air with my good friend Duane Weiss by my side. And we're going to start off today by talking about the Ukrainian war. However, before we get into that, Duane would like to speak briefly, or not so briefly.
No, it'll be brief. Every year about this time, Memorial Day comes around, and veteran organizations, you'll see them. I belong to the Legion. I think he does. There's the VFW. We don't have a VFW in town. Pretty much American Legion's the only thing we have. But the American Legion, VFW, DAV, USO, they're always, you see them with poppies. And it's a fundraiser, but it's also a memorial. In World War I, the poppies were growing up in the cemeteries, and that's where the Flanders Field, the poem came. So every year we distribute poppies. Well, this year we're going to be at the, I'm not going to say dump, we're going to be at the Transfer/Recycling Center.
Yes.
On the Wednesday and Saturday before Memorial Day. That's the 25th and the 28th. I'll be there and Jim will be there. If you see us standing around just looking lost, forlorn with a bunch of paper copies in our hand, take one. They're not really for somebody. They always ask how much. It's not a how much. We would want to see you wear that poppy to just show it someplace. That's as a symbol. But we will take a donation.
Sure.
Up to you. Nickel, dime, dollar, $100. Title to your car, we don't care.
Do you know where I usually get grabbed for the poppy? Is over to Roach Brothers.
Yeah.
In
Outside.
Millis. Those guys over there are pretty aggressive.
Oh yeah. Well, the Foxborough guys nabbed the Stop and Shop, and they got it easy because they got a couple of chairs and a table and.
Yeah. When I say aggressive, I don't mean that they're throttling you for money or anything like that, but they're there.
They're there, yeah.
And they're there for quite a while, and meeting and greeting and handing out poppies and all that. I think it's a great deal, and I always get a poppy or two. One year I had 3 of them in the car.
Oh yeah, I used to end up putting them around a mirror usually.
Yep.
And they're made by disabled vets.
Yep.
Different organizations they sit around, they do this. All the money goes to a good cause. There's no profit in it. It all gets spent for Veterans Affairs. Family of veterans get benefit from it. The veterans do. Even some of these guys are really need help. And I remember Bill said one time there shouldn't be any reason that we got to have DAV and wounded warriors, people like that, because our government should take care of all these things, but they don't. But
they don't, and it's a bloody shame. And every time the Wounded Warrior ad comes on TV, or the one that provides housing, it's very moving. And these guys need help.
Yeah.
And they went and they fought for this country.
That's
to
right.
defend us and our liberties and our way of life. And now, when it comes time, they come home and they're not able to do the things they used to be able to do because they're disabled.
They come back.
Does
with
our
terrible-
government take care of them?
Part little bit.
Yeah.
But after
But
that,
not-
they just
not
they're on their
fully.
own. Yep.
They can be building homes, for heaven's sake. Some of these prefabricated small ranches,
absolutely.
they could be throwing them up here, there, and everywhere
Yep.
for our servicemen.
So we appreciate whatever you can do.
Yep.
Hope to see you on the 25th or the 28th at the transfer station.
At the transfer station is right. Well, good. That's great. And I expect you all to stop and say hi to Duane.
And we may be at Dunkin' Donuts too, downtown Dunkin' Donuts here. But if you see somebody there with
Yeah.
Bunch of poppies, it's us.
Huh?
Okay, thanks a lot.
Good. Now, Duane made an excellent suggestion to me 2 weeks ago. He said, we need to start off the next program with the Ukraine issue. And that's great, and I'm 100% in favor of that. And we've accumulated a bunch of stuff, and Duane, take it away, kid.
Okay. Ukraine is something that's on everybody's mind and everybody in the news, but I noticed that the news is kind of typical media. It was 24/7, and then not so much, and then they get tired of it, and they just kind of, as if it goes away. I mean, they do that every time. They never stay with anything very long. But a lot of people don't know, and that would include me, a whole lot about Ukraine, what they're up against. This is truly a David versus Goliath situation. Now, I don't, Bill probably want to go into more on why Putin is in there and what he's doing, but the fact that he's there is very disturbing worldwide. You look at Ukraine back, they can trace their history back well into the 9th century. And it was called the Kievan state. I'm not sure. I don't know who that is.
I think it is a play on Kiev.
Okay, yeah, that would be. And over their history, they've been occupied by a lot of different people. They've seen people come and people go. And they've had a very tumultuous time, a very difficult time with some of these people. For example, they've been ruled by Lithuania, Poland, the Cossacks, the Ottoman Empire, the Habsburgs, the Russian Empire, and the Soviet Union. I mean, that's like, who rules us today?
And then got overrun by the Nazis in
That's
World
right.
War II.
Yep, that's right. And they've suffered terrible violence from these occupations, particularly, like Bill said, the Nazis. In the 30s and the 40s, they got a triple header. First they got the Soviet Union, then the Nazis come in, and then the Soviet Union comes back. So they got a 1, 2, and a 2, or a 2, what would it be, 1 punch and a 2 punch.
Yeah, yeah. And not to overlook either that in the 30s, the beginning of the 30s, the Russian government starved them.
That's right.
They couldn't feed them, so they starved them.
Yep.
And at one point, I've read different things, but they have said, different people have said, 6 to 10 million people died of starvation in the Ukraine. Unbelievable.
And it's kind of ironic because they're the breadbasket of Europe.
Yeah.
Now, the Soviet Union Ukraine declared independence in 1991.
Correct.
Now here's the irony of this whole thing. Ukraine's independence was recognized by first person to recognize, for a group to recognize, was the Russians. They recognized their independence. Then the U.S. and the European community says, all right, you're an independent nation. Fine and good. But you know what happened now. They didn't stay with it. You can kind of see what Russians' commitments and word are worth, particularly modern day Russia. They don't worth anything. Now, Ukraine is very important to everybody. I know people, I've heard people say, well, I don't know, that's something over in Europe someplace. That got nothing to do with us. Yeah. But it does. We live in a global community today. For example, Ukraine's the 9th largest wheat producer in the world. They're the 6th largest producer of corn. They're the
soybeans in there
soybeans,
too.
yeah.
And sunflowers.
Yep. Sunflower's another one. Yep. So a lot of you say sunflower, but cooking oil. Yep. It's not the sunflower seeds so it's the oil that's made from sunflower. And if you take one commodity, everything's related. If you take the one commodity out, somebody else has got to fill up that hole. And when they fill up that hole, it means there's a shortage here and a shortage here. Not necessarily right in Ukraine, but it's worldwide. They're also like the 6th or 9th producer of iron ore and steel.
Yeah.
In fact, they're the largest producer of parts for Volkswagen and BMW.
I wasn't aware of that, but they are a very productive country.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And another thing that's very the key here along with them is fertilizer, nitrates.
Right.
Without nitrates, we're not going to feed the world.
That's right. We're going to have a tough time feeding ourselves.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And the thing is, you think that corn and wheat, you don't just turn the spigot on.
No.
Right now is the time they've got to get those crops in. If they don't get that corn crop planted and the wheat and everything else, soybeans, sunflowers, it's going to be too late because their growing season's short anyway. And they're in a tight window.
Do you know there was an article in the Wall Street Journal
Yeah.
that said the Russians are seeding the farms with landmines
Yep. To make it difficult.
to make it difficult
Dangerous.
for the farmers to plant their crops.
Yep. Purposely going
Yep.
after the most vulnerable part of society
Yeah,
is food, and the second would be fuel.
exactly.
Yep.
It's an amazing thing. And if I could digress for just a second,
Sure.
I should have brought this point out. But in the 30s, when the Russians starved the Ukrainian people, now the Ukrainians were producing wheat, corn in large amounts. They were the breadbasket
Yep.
of Russia and that area. Now, they were producing it, and the Russian government was selling it to buy machinery to modernize their industry
That's right.
so they could compete in the world market.
Yep.
So they starved their own people
Oh yeah.
to do that.
It's incredible if you look back
Yeah.
at how they acted. Now, I said before, it's a David versus Goliath.
Yep.
Russia's got a GNP approximately 1.7 trillion versus Ukraine's 153 billion. If you want to compare that number to number, that's 1,700 to 153. Russian has a defense budget of 61 billion, Ukraine 5.9. And here's one that really is, you can see the irony of this whole thing. They just put nukes, 0. Ukraine doesn't have any nuclear force. They did have
But
when
they,
the Soviet Union was
they
there.
removed them.
But they took them out, Soviet Union took them out with the promise that the Soviet Union would respect Ukraine's border, their independence, and their sovereignty. Again, what is a Russian promise worth?
Nothing.
Historically,
Zero.
it's nothing.
Absolutely
it's like,
zero.
Trust me. Yeah, trust me. That's like saying screw you
Yeah.
with them. Yeah.
You know, one of the most amazing things, you say that, and they have broken their word
Over and
every
over.
single time they've made it. But you know who Stalin trusted? Hitler.
Oh yeah.
He actually believed he could trust Hitler, and he was shocked when Germany invaded Russia. In fact, when he got the first reports, he laughed. He didn't believe it.
Yep. Well,
That's amazing.
look at the other way around. Look how Putin parallels Hitler.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, what he's doing, how he's doing it, and the motivation, convincing his population that we're the good guys, they're the bad guys. I mean, it's like a script. He took Hitler's script and just followed it.
You know what is really amazing in all of this, in this day and age, is that he has shut down the media in Russia.
Oh yeah, he has.
So that the Russian people have no idea what's going on. None.
That's true. You see things that some people that there's a lot of, or had been a lot of cross-border communications and travel, because there are a lot of people that live in Russia got relatives in Ukraine, and the
And
vice versa.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of language
Sure.
similarities.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's the same language. And people have said, "Well, I've contacted my cousin or in Ukraine
Or Belarus.
or Belarus. I talked to them. I don't believe it." They said, "Oh no, this is not what we heard in Russia. It can't be true because we believe something else." And to this day and age, it's hard to believe that they could do that, but they really did. I thought the internet and everything else would have been more effective. Maybe it was, and maybe we don't know.
No, I think probably there are some Russians that know what's going on. But it was like a conversation I had with one of my German friends when I was stationed over there. And I said to him, Schmidt, you had to have known about concentration camps and the death camps. The kids used to say to one another, if you don't behave, you'll go up the chimney.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, that was it.
Yeah. So I said, so don't tell me you didn't know about it. And he finally said to me, he was mad too. He said, you don't understand. Yes, we knew, but we were afraid to know.
Yeah.
And we denied knowing because
Oh, yeah, it
was
really
right
was.
around the corner.
Yeah, because as an individual, you're not going to change it.
That's right.
All you're going to do is get yourself killed.
And I think this is probably one of the things that's going on
I think
in
you're
Russia
right too,
now.
because he's clamped down on any kind of disagreement, anything kind of demonstration. You can get yourself thrown in a slammer for life there. You don't know, you would disappear.
Yeah, I was reading in the paper the other day. One guy disagreed with them. Was 10 years in the slammer.
Oh yeah. Well, you say about do they know? And a lot of people do, because I just saw something about 1.5 million people have left the country now. People that are educated, the education peoples, some of the scientific community, they're bailing out.
Yeah, it must be tough though getting out.
Yeah, I think it's going to get tougher.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
It is a David and Goliath, I was surprised that population-wise between Russia and Ukraine, Ukraine's got a slightly more than a third. They got about a 44 million population, and Russia's got 141 million. The size, I tried to get all the size, but they would put everything in square miles, so that didn't mean anything to anybody.
Doesn't.
So I went around and I took out Ukraine is slightly the size, slightly smaller, or slightly larger, by a very small margin than Texas.
Yeah.
And Russia, on the other hand, is the largest country in the world.
Right.
So, but the difference was that Ukraine is 20 times smaller than Russia.
Yeah.
And Ukraine's got a military of about 300,000 versus 1.4 million in Russians. And everything is just so lopsided, it's unbelievable. For them to be holding off as much as they are, as well as they are, is amazing.
One of the points that has been made is that Russia has a large standing army, but their strength is in the reserves.
Yeah.
But that's also their weakness, because they're poorly trained and poorly equipped.
And conscripted.
Conscripted, yeah, they don't want to be in the active reserves, but yet they're forced to be. So if you call those people up, you're not going to be a lot of help.
No, they'll do whatever they can do to get out of it.
Yeah. So this is an unpopular war.
Oh yeah.
With the people that understand what's going on.
And the question in one article, will Putin survive this? And generally they said they think he will. Because one, like we said before, and you mentioned that the people don't fully realize what's going on. They don't realize the death counts that's there, the destruction counts that's there. And he survived after Afghanistan. And they lost over 15,000 people in Afghanistan. And
and yet we went right in there afterwards.
oh yeah, well
I mean,
they stepped in a pile of it, and we step in the same pile.
it's amazing how you can look at the situation and it's like putting on sunglasses. Oh, I see it clearly now. I know what the Russians did wrong, and we go in there and
It's like, don't you learn?
yeah.
Don't you see what happened?
Do you know that I'll be willing to bet you if we could get some actual typical Afghans to come on the show, they would admit they'd rather die shooting people than live and farm or live and work in a factory.
Yeah.
They live to die. They, how do you deal with that?
It's a mentality. Well, it's a culture, is what
Yeah.
it is. Because you got to remember, Afghanistan and some of those parts, their central government or their central culture were tribal.
Yeah.
Tribal.
Tribal. Yeah.
And they're always warring with each other.
Yeah. Pakistan
Yeah.
is somewhat the
Somewhat
same
like, yeah.
also. Yeah. And well, you know, the other point I was going to make too about Russia, they're a godless country.
Yeah.
There are no sets of behavior that has religion is the base for it. You know, there's no teaching of ethics and the right way and the wrong way. It is the fist.
Yeah. Well, that was destroyed by the communist regimes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there were in 1917 when they eventually overthrew the Tsar and things went kapflooey.
I hope that get a little better understanding of what's going on there from a background point of view. But what's going to happen now, we can only speculate.
You know, there's an interesting article from the Wall Street Journal, how the Ukraine war changed history. And he makes 3 points in here. Number one, NATO will emerge from the war in Ukraine as a more united and effective defensive force. As members transfer their stocks of Soviet-era weapons to Zelensky's government, the U.S. and others will replace those stocks with modern weapons that can operate in tandem across the alliance.
Yeah.
Now, that is all well and good. I think the strengthening of NATO is great. However, NATO forces, the different countries, have got to pay their fair share.
Yeah.
Otherwise, if we have to pick up the tab for this,
That's very true.
man alive, I don't know how the hell we're going to do it. It just hard to believe that we can
I
do
see
it.
today was it Finland and Sweden now are
Yes.
interested.
And they have come out and said, when can we
When
join?
Putin thought that would drive him away, though, his aggressiveness, but it doesn't.
It hasn't. They want the protection. The Finns don't want another invasion or war with the Russians.
No.
And number two, the war has transformed Germany. Europe's economic powerhouse has abandoned a foreign and defense policy shaped by memories of World War II and has pledged to rebuild its military and expand its military spending to at least 2% of gross domestic product. Step by step, it has relaxed prior limits on arms transfers to countries actively engaged in military conflicts and recently agreed to send heavy weapons to the Ukraine. So rather than a neutral approach, like we dictated they had to do, them and Japan both, after World War II, they are now saying, we'll step up and do our share.
Yeah.
That's important.
Oh, it's very important. Because prior to that, after we said that, we were totally responsible. They were like taking in 2 stepchildren.
Yeah. Yeah.
We had to protect everything from them.
Yeah.
For them.
And you know, the difference between America occupying Germany and Japan and people like Russia or Germany occupying countries they conquered. We helped them, we fed them, we clothed them, and we got them back up on their feet and helped them rebuild their industry and their country. Where the Russians lowered the hammer on them and exploited them and ground them and took everything they could out of the country.
I'd be interested. Well, we'll find out at some point what Putin decides is going to do with Ukraine if he gets his way. It's like riding a tiger. He don't dare get off.
You're absolutely right. Another bit of fallout. Oh, and number 3. The war is forcing Europe to reduce its dependence on Russian energy. In an era of tight supplies and high prices, this will be painful. But even Germany, whose extensive energy ties with Russia have long been a strategic weakness for the West, realizes there is no alternative. And the Germans were scheduled to phase out 2 nuclear power plants. They're changing their minds. They're going to keep on running them. And, you know, this was so short-sighted of this country, shutting down nuclear power plants. It's clean, reliable, non-polluting energy. Everything we want green energy to be. But the little old ladies didn't, I don't want that near me. And
well, there's a lot of fear in that. When they don't understand something,
that's right.
then you can evoke fear into them easy. You know, it used to be the China syndrome. Remember that term?
Yeah.
That if one of these things go out of control, it's going to melt right through the earth, right through into the core, right out the other side. Absolutely ridiculous, but you could find everybody on the street would believe it.
The little old ladies,
Yep.
or the college professors,
Yep.
look at Nagasaki, look at Hiroshima. This is what atomic power did. We don't want atomic power in our neighborhoods. The atomic bomb was different than a nuclear power plant.
Absolutely.
I mean, come on. Ay. So over the next decade, Europe is going to change the way they do business.
You can't trust them anymore.
Well, you can't. You never could trust them.
Yeah, well, you
but
never could.
But as long as they were providing cheap natural gas, we made a deal with them.
I think the blinders have come off somewhat now. You cannot put your eggs in a Russian basket, because he's going to turn, or somebody is going to turn around and use it against you. If you become dependent on any kind of a critical need from Russia, you're playing with fire, because they're going to use that, turn the screws on you with it.
He goes on to make a couple of other points. Vladimir Putin's decision to invade Ukraine will trigger a sharp recession and could lead to a long-term decline in Russian living standards.
Oh, yeah.
Elvira, I'm not even going to try to pronounce her last name, the respected head of Russia's central bank and a Putin loyalist, understood this and tried to resign in protest. But Mr. Putin was unmoved. The desire to eliminate a perceived threat to his legitimacy and realize his dream of recreating the Russian Empire took priority.
Yep.
Now, so we ask ourselves, why has Putin done this? Here's the key. He wants to recreate the glory days of Mother Russia when they owned everything.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And he is bound and determined. He is going to be the guy.
That brings back imperialistic
That's right.
Russia.
With the sword, he will do it because he is the mighty Putin. Well, guess what? These countries don't want to be back under Mother Russia. So he's got a tough row to hoe. When the Russian people also understand what has happened, when they see guys coming back without arms and legs,
Exactly.
they've got to ask questions, and Putin then will have his hands full. But you know what he'll do? He'll drop the secret police on them,
Yeah.
and they'll start locking people up to talk about it. And,
The fear factor will take over.
yeah.
But another thing that you got a little problem with Russia and the population with sanctioned. Don't forget the fact that a Russian walks into a grocery store and if he's over 40 or 50 years old and sees empty shelves, that's not going to shock him.
No.
Because over the period of years prior to this, they've always had shortages of this and shortages of that.
Long lines outside the stores
exactly.
waiting for them to open at 7 o'clock.
Yep. So that's that to the older generation. You know, I would say probably 40 or 50 years old. That's normal. That's not something that really shock him. It does going to shock the 18-year-old, the 21 and the 25-year-old, the new generations coming up because they're not used to this.
They're the ones that aren't too keen on following Putin.
Exactly. Yep. Because they never lived under anything else.
Yeah.
China's got the same problem.
Yeah.
China was just so damn poor they hardly had electricity in most places. They didn't have anything. And they lived with it and they accepted it. Now you got a population that's got a middle class and cars and TVs and refrigerators. You start taking them away from them again, then you're going to have problems.
Big problems.
Yeah.
One of the things, too, that he points out in this article is in the U.S., Trump supporters have joined Democrats and non-Trumpist Republicans to condemn the Russian invasion and back tough American measures against it. Mr. Putin's aggression has done more to unify public opinion in the U.S. than any other event since 9/11.
It is. They're cooperating now.
Yeah, I mean, they banged through the $33 billion measure for weapons on a voice vote, just wham, wham, and it was a done deal. So there's a lot of things that are changing. The question is whether President Biden will draw the obvious conclusion. If the U.S. must defend democracy against autocracy, as Mr. Biden rightly insists it must, it will need to devote more than 3% of its GDP to the defense budget and reorder military spending to counter today's threat on European and Asia-Pacific fronts.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
So I think all that's true.
Well, I agree with that.
Yeah.
But right now we've got I don't know how to say this. We got to take that climate commitment that we're making, getting rid of fossil fuels, doing this, doing that, and put that back on a shelf for a while. We got problems right now that are up front. That thing with Ukraine, and it's going to be the food supply, the fuel supplies.
China and Taiwan.
Put that climate control. That's going to be here for a long time.
That's right.
And if you don't take care of the business that you got to take care of today, meaning the European situation, you ain't even going to have a chance to take care of the climate situation.
That's right. That's right. Exactly.
So do them in order.
But then again, you get headlines by John Kerry.
Oh,
If we step back from climate, I'll
God.
resign.
well, good.
Oh, well, now, boy, oh, boy.
Well, yeah.
That sent me right out in the backyard
You want us to
crying.
hold the door for you?
Yeah. I mean, that brain-dead bozo is actually influencing a lot of policy
Pretty scary.
in Washington.
Pretty scary, isn't it?
It is.
Yep.
I mean, that guy, if you could tell me anything he's accomplished in his career, I mean,
Well, he married Teresa Hines.
yeah. And before that, he married whatever her face was, and she had some money.
Yeah, he knows how to find a chunk of money.
Yeah. Unbelievable. So there's another article here that I'd like to take apart a little bit. Putin's Victory Day speech offers a path to Russia's defeat. Now, Victory Day in Russia was May 9th.
Right.
That was the day that the World War II ended
Yeah.
in Europe. Still had a ways to go over in the Pacific, but that is the day the Russian
That's what
troops.
they were concerned about. Is
And so this writer said, 3 things struck me about Putin's speech. First, even though the Russian military is short of men in Ukraine, he did not call for mass mobilization. He thought it would raise much more domestic opposition, I was told by Angela Stent, author of Putin's World, Russia Against the West and the Rest. Right now, Russian troops fighting in Ukraine include conscripts from rural areas or units from the far east of the country, many of whom reportedly believe they are fighting Nazis.
Oh yeah.
A national mobilization would have brought in youths from cities, meaning news of Russia's ugly war would have trickled back to the urban population. Even the Kremlin's near control of Russian media wouldn't have prevented wider public grasp of war's realities, including Russian casualties. Second, Putin didn't brag about annexing the new territory Russia has grabbed, including Mariupol. No doubt he is aware the world has seen the video of Russia's massive destruction of cities and people, equivalent to Hitler's. Or perhaps he realizes the takeover may not be permanent. Third, before an international audience focused intently on his speech, Putin did not make the expected comparisons between victory in 1945 and the defeat of the Ukraine. That tells me he is now trying to define what kind of victory he can achieve. Clearly, he now recognizes he can't take over all of Ukraine. The Russian dictator also appears leery of provoking a wider war with NATO, even though he ludicrously blamed NATO for provoking Ukraine into threatening Russia.
Yeah.
Boy, talk about changing the narrative.
Well, they expected a real blood and guts and thunder and lightning thing from him, and they didn't get it on his speech.
Yeah. So there's 3 points. Now, where does that leave Putin? Well, it leaves him, and she makes a point, or he makes a point, or whoever this is. Yeah, she makes a point, that he is being compared now to Hitler. This is how Hitler went about his business. Scorched earth.
Yep.
Kill people.
Terrorizing them.
Yes. And Putin is doing that with civilians. He is killing them, saying
That's
to
right.
them, you people defied me. You should have rolled over and played dead when we came in.
Yep.
But you picked up arms and you chose to shoot back at us. Well, you're going to pay the price for it. I'm going to kill every damn last one of you. And that'll fix you. That's what he's saying.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He's
He's a
putting this
madman.
absolute terror onto the civilian population, and that's the easiest ones to do it because they're defenseless.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, not quite anymore, but
That's right, yeah. But she goes on to say, my guess is he hopes to win more territory in the Donbass region, in eastern Ukraine, and in the south, occupying a wide swath of Ukraine that connects mainland Russia with occupied Crimea and cuts Ukraine entirely off from the Black Sea. And with that, the economy of the Ukraine has got to go down.
of course.
Yeah. And that's his long-term
He's going to
plan.
be in this fight that I know they're not stupid. They know what can happen. But you can see this if they get into a situation where they actually take an area and they control it, it's theirs. What are you going to do with it? Because everybody that's walking on the street is a potential enemy. Do you think for a minute that if he puts in a governor and a lieutenant governor and this person, how long they're going to live? Somebody's going to shoot them. You can't protect them 24/7 like that.
That's right.
They can't even live in the country because somebody's going to blow up their house. It's going to be non-ending.
Did they learn nothing in Chechnya?
No.
Did they learn nothing in Afghanistan?
No.
This will be another guerrilla war
Yep.
that they will have around their neck like
This
a
will be
millstone.
worse
It'll be worse.
because you got a country that's motivated to get rid of them. Afghanistan was a tribe
who
this
knows
and tribe
what
that. They
they're-
were not organized with anything. This one would do this, and this one would this, and this one's his friend, this is his enemy. They are united
Absolutely.
on a single cause.
And
go
with
ahead.
NATO supplying
That's
them.
right. They got some high tech stuff going in there.
Yep.
Did you see yesterday's news about the hobby people sending them the little Troy drones?
No.
Well, there is something called racing drones.
Yeah.
If you watch at night, sometimes these crazy sports things, and these things do about 100 and some miles an hour, and they're only about this big. Well, this company that's making these racing drones is sending hundreds of these things modified to the Ukraine. Each one can carry some kind of a grenade. And it travels like 130, 140 miles an hour, and it's only this big. You can't stop it.
Yeah.
And they zero in on troops and stuff, and zoop. It's a real terror weapon.
You know, it's amazing. The Russians have gotten a hell of a lot more than they ever bargained
Oh,
for.
yeah.
They went into this blind.
Yeah.
And you know, the old World War II days of a line of tanks,
Yeah.
26 miles long, the people are going to be terrorized. They're going to run screaming, henny penny, the sky is falling.
Now a
And
line
guess
of,
what? They
line
didn't.
of tanks is just one great big target.
That's right.
Because today, even the philosophy, well, I don't want NATO on my doorstep. It doesn't matter. Because you can fight this war from 200 miles back, or 1,000 miles back, or a country back. You don't have to be any more next door.
That is, we've just honed in, we've danced around this, we've just honed in on the co-reason
Yeah.
that he did this.
Yeah.
First of all, his dream about reuniting Mother Russia. But number two was NATO is on his doorstep and he's paranoid about it.
Oh, absolutely.
Now, you might say that, you don't walk up to a vicious dog and poke him with a stick.
Yeah.
But we certainly did surround him
Oh,
with
absolutely.
NATO.
No question about it.
And when you're dealing with an unstable person, and an unstable nation, to be honest with you, that you've got to expect blowback. And we're getting some of that.
We would have done this. We would have had this a similar response of outrage, so to speak, if, say, you remember? Well, of course, the Cuban Missile Crisis. We went nuts with that one, and that was. It was still back in the little hell of a lot more primitive than the warfare is today.
True story.
But if the Soviet, I keep calling them Soviet Union, they're acting like Soviet Union.
Yeah.
If Russia today set up some force in Tijuana, Mexico, or Juarez, or we'd go nuts.
Absolutely.
As if it would make any damn difference to an ICBM if it was in Moscow or it was in Juarez, Mexico. Because it doesn't matter.
Don't matter. No.
Where
or
it is.
coming out of a nuclear submarine.
Or out of a nuclear
Yeah.
submarine.
Off
But
Newport
psychologically,
News,
though, it would be,
Virginia.
we'd go
Yeah.
nuts.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, you saw what we did over Cuba.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was back in '62.
And now, I believe that one of our presidents has dissolved the Monroe Doctrine.
Okay, yeah.
I'm not sure of that. It seems to me that one of them said it doesn't apply any longer or something. Obviously, I'll have to Google that. But the Monroe Doctrine was fine 250 years ago.
Exactly.
It's changed. The world has changed.
Oh, my God.
The world has gotten smaller. So we have to change with it. But you're right. If they landed and put a couple of divisions in Tijuana, we'd go
We go
absolutely rat mad. Absolutely. So at what point? Well, wait a minute. Putin and peace talks. That's two subjects. They don't work well together.
Two diabolically opposed points.
But yet, somehow or other, that's how this is going to eventually end. Unless this is just a festering sore that goes on for the next 7 years. And you know what? I can't see it going on for the next 7 years without him using nuclear weapons.
He is a dangerous individual to back into a corner because he doesn't think ahead, I don't think, in a lot of things.
His IQ is not really at the top of the
No.
class.
So they've got too much. He has too much testosterone.
Yeah, he's a vicious man.
Now, what do you think that? Let's say this thing comes to a head, and they say, "All right, we've had enough. We pull out." How do you rebuild? Ukraine, and who pays for it?
Sucker Crane rides again, and all the other taxpayers in America. We're gonna be the ones that are gonna put the money into
Just
it.
like we did Europe and Japan.
The Marshall Plan, yeah. And he's destroyed the country.
Oh, absolutely.
And you know what he's going to do when he pulls out? He's going to laugh like hell.
Yep.
He's going to say they're going to destroy their economy now. And you know what? 5 years from now, I'm going to go back in there and do it again.
Yeah.
Because I know nothing will happen.
Nothing will happen to me.
And, well, of course, we have a president who, when looking at the intelligence, said, well, looks like they're going to invade. Or he didn't call it an invasion, an incursion.
Incursion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. In other words, ho-hum, business as usual. Looks like he's going to go in there and do something. What a guy. What a guy.
It's too bad.
Yeah. And you know, what's even sadder? Kamala Harris.
I don't even want to get. I can't fathom her.
Nancy Pelosi.
Yep.
I mean, as you go down the ladder, it just gets worse.
Yeah.
You know, the Democratic Party accuses the Republicans of being racist. That's their favorite word for us.
Well, that sends to a liberal. That's a terror word.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
So, what is a racist? A person who makes decisions based on race. So, when Biden was instructed by Obama or whomever, and I believe Obama, you must pick a black woman as vice president. So, the percentage of blacks in the U.S. is 14%. So, let's just say it breaks 50-50, male-female. So, we have narrowed the field down to 7%.
That's right.
Of the American public. That's not racist.
Of course it is. It's showing bias for one given demographic characteristic.
But you know what Biden would say? Or the Democrats would say. I don't think he's bright enough to say it. He'd say, well, when we do it with love in our hearts. Because we know this woman, this is the only way we're going to level the playing field. And you know what an insult that is to minorities?
Well, of course it is.
When you say the only way you're going to get ahead is we're going to push you. You can't do it by yourself.
Yep.
You're hopeless.
Well, that's affirmative action.
What a mess. And now I'm all tense. But if we say or do the wrong thing, or Putin says and does the wrong thing, we could have one hell of a mess on our hands.
Absolutely.
I will say this much about Biden. He has been adamant that we are not going to bear arms, and our boys are not going to participate in combat.
Yeah.
That's the saving grace. That's the right thing to do.
Well, in a conflict today, that's got to be the last step, because technology, you don't have to put a soldier on the ground anymore.
Now, so how do you think this ends, Duane?
How do I think it ends? Oh boy, that's difficult, bro. I kind of see Putin taking an escape route, kind of like sulking off in the middle of the night and saying, "Oh boy, I taught you a lesson. I'll see you around. Don't irritate me again."
He's
kind of
going
just pull it back, and
he's going to declare victory.
oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
He says, I
He's
taught
going
you
to
a
say,
lesson.
there, now mess with us again, you bunch of bozos.
When actually he's got his tail between his legs and getting the hell out of there.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
That's that's what I see this thing going, and I see Ukraine is going to be it's a mess.
It is a mess, and I think he is going to continue this burning and destructing and raping this poor country until he gets that pathway. I think this lady's got it right. He wants that pathway to connect to Crimea.
Oh, sure.
Once he gets that, I think then he's going to really dump some bombs and then say, there. Now, I've taught you a lesson. And now, the rest of you little countries in the world that I want to absorb, I will destroy you to get you.
Yeah.
Like Moldova
Yeah.
or
Good Lord.
those little countries, you know, Georgia. I mean, so many of them, the breakaway republics. He's going to want them back. And you know what we're going to do?
Nothing.
Yeah. I think we do that well.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's the path of least resistance.
Yep. It is exactly. So, here's the deal. The job of rebuilding Ukraine and Russia after Putin. I think NATO countries will help.
Yeah, I think so.
I think that the U.S., Great Britain, and Germany will probably pony up the most money. And I think that inflation is here to stay in this country because
True.
we're going to have to finance this
Oh, yeah.
through borrowing. And I'll tell you what, there could be an ancillary, tiny, little plus in all of this, in that it'll drive up long-term rates in the 30-year bond so that retirees
Yeah.
can earn a safe yield on their savings, because now you can't do it.
Well, I just got my statement, and I got 88 cents last month on interest.
Wow.
1/10 of 1%.
What can you get with 88 cents?
I don't know.
Sprinkles on your ice cream?
You can't even get that, I think.
But, well, I tell you what, we need to keep on top of this. And keep reviewing what goes on over there and put our 2 cents worth in.
Oh, yeah.
This was a worthwhile hour.
Yep. I hope you found something out there, folks, that you could use.
Yeah, I hope that you didn't sleep through that. But anyway, big headlines this morning in the paper too. Russia pounds supply lines across the country. It's the strategy they're using.
Sure.
You know, I think we've done a pretty darn good job of explaining this. Probably came up a little short on the conclusions and the direction to go.
How could you and I come up with a conclusion? The whole damn country can't come up with a conclusion.
Or better yet, a solution.
Well, that's what I meant. a solution.
Yeah. So, friends, take a break. And we're going to be back to you with the second half of this extravaganza in a moment or two.
See you later.